Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our online information and support session. The cancer journey can bring many challenges and unwelcome changes. It can also be a time of contemplation and personal growth. My name is Kathleen Helgeson and I'm the coordinator of the Patient and Family Resource Center. And I'm joined today by Daniel Barclay, spiritual health practitioner. And together we're going to explore how to bring meaning and hope to times of change. We're very pleased to offer this session with the generous funding support of the Cancer Care Manitoba Foundation. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we're meeting from all regions in Manitoba, the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe Cree, and Dene people, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. It's important for us to foster inclusivity and reconciliation and encourage others to do the same. Before we begin, there are a few basic Zoom features that I'd like to explain. You'll notice as an attendee, your microphone and your video are turned off. If you have a question for Daniel at any time during the presentation, just click on the Q&A icon on your screen and type your question. You can also choose to ask that question anonymously by checking the Send Anonymously box before you click on the blue arrow to send. My coworker Ellie is also here off screen, and she will be helping manage your questions and comments as they come in. If you have a technical concern, you can also ask Ellie in the Q&A and she will answer your question privately and try to assist you. We've also enabled the closed captioning. However, if you find that distracting, you can turn that off by clicking on the icon that says transcript CC, and you can hide those subtitles at the bottom of your screen. So I'd like to now introduce our guest, Daniel Barclay, who's worked in the field of spiritual health for the past 10 years at the Health Science Center. He offers emotional and spiritual support and is passionate about walking alongside the people through different seasons in their lives, whether they are flourishing or struggling or somewhere in between. And outside of work, Daniel enjoys reading, cooking, and time out in nature. Thank you and welcome, Daniel, to our presentation today.
Thank you, Kathleen, and wonderful to be part of it. And I wish I could see everybody, in person and be a part of a more of an in-group gathering, but this will do as well. So I'm grateful for it. I know it's a long time coming, this interview. I think you asked me last year around this time.
I did.
And with Wave 2 taking place, I just had to pause for a bit. But I'm glad you were persistent and asked me again. So thank you.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you here. I did see a sign the other day that made me think of this presentation, and it had said, "Autumn reminds us how beautiful it can be to let go." And I'd like to start with that because for me that really struck a chord, because I know intellectually that everything changes and that letting go is critical to my well-being. But it's not always easy and it's not always beautiful to have to do that. So yeah, I just, like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, first of all, typically the posters I read up in the city or the billboards are often trying to advertise me something. So I'm glad you're able to find this poster that's quite unique. And I think it's very wise. And whoever posted that, I hope they do more of those just to get people reflecting on life, no matter what season. And I like the idea of autumn being a time of letting go because, obviously the leaves start to fall, but it's also when the leaves are falling, it's not a one and done process. It's a slow process where it starts to gather its strength and it starts to gather its energies for the winter. And it's not so much of a bad thing. It's more of a recognition that change is coming and how we draw in our resources to help us through that time. So I like it.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe we could start, first of all, just by getting some feedback from our audience and to ask them just in terms of what type of changes they've been faced with. Write your response into the Q&A, and Allie can share those results with us. So we wanted to ask, what type of changes have you experienced in your life and since your diagnosis of cancer? So whether it be physical changes, relationship changes, maybe changes to your outlook on life, maybe emotional or mental health changes, or maybe certain priorities have shifted for you. So if you'd like to share some thoughts of that in the Q&A, and then Ellie can just relay them to us.
And again, too, I think you may have mentioned this, I may have missed it, Kathleen, but if there's also something on that list that doesn't resonate with you, you can add your own. Yeah, because it's not an exhaustive list, that's for sure. It's just a little example of some of the things.
That's right. Yeah, we know that there's many challenges and changes that people face during their cancer journey. So one person has commented about limitations, both physical and mental limitations that they've experienced. Someone else has noted accepting that I may not be able to go back to the job that I love. So did you want to take a moment just to even comment on those right now while we await some other responses?
Sure. When I talk to people who I meet who have been diagnosed with cancer, often the first response is a matter of just, first of all, just dealing with all that news of what this is going to mean for my life and how it's going to impact me. And then later on, as the care progresses and the treatment perhaps takes place, then at that point I find the conversations turn to more the ways that cancer is impacting their life in many different ways. And that can include the physical part of our bodies, perhaps those who are going for treatment or going for surgery, those who may lose their hair, lose a part of their body, and have a loss that way, or a change in their life that way, and how that impacts not only themselves but also their relationships. And that's another change that comes with a cancer diagnosis, the relationships that we have with our partner, with our spouse, with our children, our families, our friends, in our relationships, and the roles that may change in those relationships. And obviously those relationships can include work relationships, not being able to go back to the job that we once had and perhaps loved, and recognizing that that new reality is going to be a major change for them. And there's also changes in terms of mental and spiritual as well, but we may touch on that later on.
Yeah. So somebody else did mention, Jess, in terms of relationships, definitely being having changed and being off work, and then the time spent with family, and the isolation that's involved, and the physical changes. Someone else is mentioning lack of strength, not being able to do simple things, loss of control. Those are really difficult changes, at the best of times, right? To feel that you don't have control, or you can't do the certain things that you wanted to do.
And one thing I like to do, unfortunately I can't do it through Zoom in a larger group, but I always try to ask the people I meet with here in the hospital who share, similar or connecting themes with the ones that have just been shared from participants here, is that, what has this time been like for you? And being here to hear the stories, because each story is different and each story is unique, and each story has this important element of their lives that need to be expressed, and we don't always get a chance to do that.
No, that's true. Yeah, and this is one of the impediments of the pandemic, is not being able to be in person to really share and meet with other people that are going through the same experience. There's a comment that wasn't part of our list, and I'm glad somebody mentioned it: loss of driving, and somebody else mentioning a lack of family support. So oftentimes we think that those things will continue, but that can change.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
In times of crisis, sometimes the people that we think are going to be there for us aren't necessarily.
Those are really great examples that have the overarching theme of control and independence, and it's not having the life that we used to have.
A couple more comments about losing the job, going through some personal growth or having changes, I guess, in positive changes, but not being able to exercise, not feeling energetic.
Mm,
And I would think that
mhm.
that could then, impact on our mental health too, right? That these things
Indeed.
start to overlap in terms of changes to one's mental health as well as emotional well-being.
That's right. Yes. Because as I'm sure most of us know that there is that connection between all of them. What happens to one part of our lives impacts
Yeah.
the rest of it too.
One of the losses that we often hear people talk about is loss of identity.
Mhm.
And what are people referring to when they fear that, or they've experienced that through their illness, that they feel that they're losing their identity?
Well, like the examples that we had already, they touch on a lot of those pieces of identity, who I am or how I see myself as a person, as someone who has a life that they have built for themselves, and not being able to have those um, elements and part of their lives creates a big change to how we see ourselves, how they see themselves, how anybody would see themselves in that experience. Because what happens, to us, when we lose our identity, is that there is a loss for us there. There's a loss of a hope of who we want to be, loss of a hope in terms of how we envisioned our life to look, and also um, a loss of the opportunity to um, pursue the dreams we had for ourselves. And so when you have all that, as your goals in your life, and that changes, starts to look at, who am I now?
Mhm.
What kind of life am I going to live now that that's not longer a part of my life? Or it's different in my life. Maybe it looks a little bit different. Maybe it's completely different. Maybe it's a little bit of a change. Or maybe it's completely changed.
Mhm.
And I think of the people that I've met, here in the hospital who have spoken on that. And I remember a woman who I met, just recently, last week. I mentioned it to you and Allie, where a woman had come into the hospital with breast cancer and had a mastectomy.
Mhm.
And she started to talk about the changes to her body and what that meant for her, and how that impacted, her relationship with her spouse, and how she wondered how he was going to see her, with these
Mhm.
physical changes. And she didn't know for sure, and part of that was the unknown. And so I think identity can include, aspects of our physical, how we look physically. With treatment, it can change our bodies. It can change not just our bodies in terms of its looks, but in terms of our energy, and in
Mhm.
terms of how we feel, being able to do things as we used to. Maybe that energy takes away, being able to do tasks that we're used to doing, and it's a lot harder.
Right.
Um, Maybe also those changes include relational. As I mentioned before too, our roles in our lives, roles that we value and maybe change, role as a parent, role
Mhm.
as a spouse, or in the workplace, and the change that comes with that. And also mentally and emotionally as well. I've met many people here in the hospital who have cancer, who talk about the anxiety that cancer can bring, and feeling like this isn't normally how I feel, and I'm worried that there's something wrong with me,
Mhm.
or maybe even depression, um, having to deal with so many changes, and life um, becoming much different than it used to be. And
Mhm.
being able to navigate through that can bring for some depression,
Right.
um, and also spiritually as well. The big question, why me?
Mhm.
Why has this happened to myself, and what is this going to mean for my life now? Asking the larger, bigger questions. And I'll touch on this more later, but when I mean spirituality, I mean where you find meaning and purpose in life, and that
Mhm.
can be many different things for many different
Mhm.
people. It's
Right.
asking the bigger questions about what life has in store for me.
Mhm. When we talk about losses and another comment somebody's made here is about, just financial instability. And so even security of, finances can be a loss. But when we talk about these many losses that people may experience, how do you balance grieving those losses? Because it is a grieving process to lose things, right? And we often don't think of, loss that way, but it does require us to grieve just as we would grieve other things that we lose. How do you balance that though with accepting the new realities that are now in your life? Like, how do you know, well, okay, enough time grieving, now I have to accept that the things, I have limitations, and there's certain things that I no longer can do. Where do you find the balance there?
I think important part in moving toward that balance is being able to express that grief and loss. I find that it's hard for a lot of us to go to that place that scares us, to go to that place that feels heavy, and feel like if I go to that place, it's going to be too much.
Mm-hmm.
And because we can look at those harder emotions, some would say even darker emotions, not that they're bad, but they can be so heavy. And in moving toward that grief, rather than trying to hide it or push it away or keep ourselves busy by trying to ignore it, because it never goes away. It's always there trying to get our attention. And we can see grief at times as kind of like something that is trying to harm us. But I've come to realize that grief is more like a friend that's trying to get our attention and say, hey, there's something here in your life that needs attention, that needs some healing, that needs some time in TLC to care for. So I think part of moving toward that balance is being able to express it, and being able to express it to people that you trust, whether that's a counselor, whether that's your friend, or whether that's someone in your life who you trust, a religious leader of some sort, if that's works for you too. And being able to have that space, a safe space to share that. And I think for many people I have met and talked to, being able to share it starts to unload some of that heaviness that they've been carrying. Mm-hmm. I kind of think of it like atlases, carrying the world on their shoulder, and you have this weight, but when you share it with someone, you are no longer carrying it on your own. Mm-hmm. You are sharing it with somebody else who can carry it with you and talk to you about that. And so moving toward grief, and another thing about grief too, is that we sometimes think we have to get over it sooner than later. Sometimes that's pressure on ourselves that we put on ourselves, and maybe that's pressure from family or others to say, like, you've gone through this, get over it already. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Each person's different in how they grieve and how long it takes to process that and work through that. And so to be gentle and kind and understanding for yourself as you express that. And I truly firmly believe that as you are able to share that and express those feelings, that you come to a place where you start to realize, okay, what is the next step now in this? It helps to ease that angst that maybe keeps us from moving toward that balance.
Right. So, when you're talking, I mean, the word that keeps coming up for me is just sadness, right? That there's a sadness there that is often not expressed, and as you said, that there's some resistance sometimes to going to that darker place and talking about that. And I often sometimes think too that there must be on some people some pressure to be positive, to have this, to show their strength all the time, to be brave. And these are all important qualities, of course, especially when you're going through trying times. But there's a balance there too, right? I mean, between being strong and staying positive, but also being able to acknowledge things being painful, things being difficult, feeling sad.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. To be in that place of sadness all the time would be too much. You need time to be able to go, okay, today is a good day. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate what's maybe, I woke up and had a good coffee and a nice lovely breakfast. Celebrate that and celebrate the things that are still good, and not stay stuck in that place of grief, but to be able to celebrate other parts of our lives that, are going well, or even just a tiny bit well. You hold on to that part of your life that is there. Yes.
Yeah. So it's almost like acknowledging that all feelings are valid, the whole range of them,
Yeah.
and whatever intensity of them, they're all valid, right? And people will experience them at different frequencies and intensities. Yeah.
That's right. And sometimes you need a break from just talking about it too.
Mm-hmm.
As good as it is to express it and talk about it, sometimes you need a break from that too. It's just like, I've talked enough. Now I need time just to focus on something else in my life. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see if the second poll will work here. So I'm going to see if I can launch the second poll to our audience. The question has been, what's been helpful in guiding you through these changes in your life? So if you could take a moment and reflect on that. And again, like Daniel said, this isn't an exhaustive list. So if there's those responses don't resonate with you, just add your comment in the Q&A and Ali will relay it to us. So we'll give that a moment or so that you can weigh in on that, because we'd like to hear what works and what's been helpful. So Ali will share the results with you, and then Daniel, you can reflect on or comment on that. Are you seeing that there?
I am. Yes. Yes. I'm not surprised by, not that any of them were surprising, but, family and friends came out on top. And I find in the people I have talked to too, that's a huge part of it. And each one, I would say, for many people, all of them are an important part of their journey through this and helping them find paths of healing and paths of support and people in their lives who they can turn to. And I'm happy to see that, one doesn't really dominate extremely heavily. They're all accessed and supported that way.
Right.
Yeah.
When we mentioned about, there's maybe another comment here. Oh, someone mentioned that I've been support through the WIG and headwear program, and that that's something that we've talked about here in terms of the impact that a lot of people experience when they lose their hair. That's a huge change in it can be a very upsetting, traumatic time for people, and it makes the experience very concrete that a loss of control, a drastic change in appearance, a loss of identity. So yeah, that's something that we've definitely noticed a lot, that doing the headwear and wig program is that can be really difficult.
Yes, absolutely. And even the one that I was shown recently about, just the resources in general that you provide through your agency is just wonderful and tremendous. And I'm sure for many is valuable support, including, these monthly or regularly Zoom meetings for support. It's all part of it. It's all part of helping, us support each other and find ways to care for each other.
I do want to ask about the one faith and spiritual practices. I'm not sure, Ali, have you closed the results of that already? Do you remember what percentage was that, the faith and spiritual practices?
I don't remember exactly. No, I want to say 40 or 50%.
Okay, yeah, it's not, as I said, it's not showing on my screen, but
I closed it, unfortunately. There it is. 58%. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. Can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, when we first were discussing about having this session, there's some concern that the term spirituality will turn some people off and think that this won't be a topic that they're interested in, or whether we'll reach the same amount of people. But could you comment on, what the difference is between religion and spirituality, and how you see that being the same or different.
Yeah, they're interconnected in many ways. I guess I could say when I speak about spiritual health, or spirituality in general, it's a general sense of, finding a place in your life where you feel connected, to life, to higher power, to your things that are important to you, where you find sense of meaning. And for some, that will be their faith, and all that comes with that, community support from their faith community, or through prayer, or through reading their sacred scriptures. For others, that will look like being able to have time with your family and find support that way, and the connection that you have through that. For others, where they find meaning and purpose can include being able to participate in art, whether that's music, or whether that's drawing or writing. For others, it's connection to nature. And for some, it's all those things. It's where we find a sense of connection within ourselves, where we draw on something that really feels a sense for us, a sense of peace, a sense of comfort, a sense of a love toward ourselves and the world. And religion is one aspect of that spirituality.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be necessarily a part of it.
It doesn't. No.
Yeah.
I remember doing a presentation not too long ago where some person said, spirituality doesn't, ring a tone for me. Even though I'm not religious, it doesn't sit with me. And so I said, maybe the word is meaning for you. And they were like, yeah, that does work for me instead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different for all. And I find that more times than not, people can identify what that is for them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's having the question of, what stirs your soul? What stirs your passion in life? What stirs you to feeling like, you belong in this world and have a place in it? And taking the time to contemplate that and sit with that and go, okay, what is that for me? What is that peace in my life where I do feel, a great sense of being able to feel connected to this world in some way, in some form, and in this world, in a sense, of the people in it, but also for some that includes their relationship with their faith and how that forms how they live their life. Mm-hmm. And what values they hold and why that's important. Yeah.
Do you think it's normal for people to have doubts about their faith and their belief during times of crisis, or do people generally develop a stronger faith during times of crisis? Because somebody here, one of our audience members, said they have a stronger faith in God. They feel a closer relationship. But is it as common for people to start to have doubts about their beliefs?
Oh, definitely. Yes, and yes. Mm. Doubts are, I think, some people think it's an act of not having enough faith, where I see doubts as that stirring and longing for, that sense of what's going on, what's happening. I don't understand, and I'm scared, and I'm worried, and I don't know what's going to happen next. And so they may question, and they may wonder and worry. And it doesn't mean that they don't have still that same important sense of faith. It's just more like, I'm struggling right now, and I'm figuring out how, my life and my faith, intertwine, and what that looks like. And I think over time, as people, share that, much like I talked about before, where people have a chance to express that and what that means, they start to go, okay, I'm starting to grow in that. And some people still struggle. There's days where they feel great and like, oh, my faith is feeling strong, and my my belief, whatever they may be, are feeling strong. And other days where, something has happened, whether through their cancer treatment or through their life with cancer, that, they have a, harder day, or maybe a month of harder days, and you start questioning what is going on. And, you look at, many sacred scriptures where, there's people who we consider, strong people in faith, but who also struggle, who ask questions, who wonder, and who trying to understand what is happening in their life. And it doesn't take away their faith. I think it's a trust in that, in their faith, that they can ask those questions, and they can wonder, and can feel like it's okay, to express, those thoughts and feelings.
You use the term in the title of this presentation, the art of living. How would you describe what that means?
I think living in itself, we're always creating, the life that we want to make for ourselves. That can include, the people we bring into our lives as friends, the career path we choose, our interests and activities we choose. And so I often see that as an art form where we're creating something for our lives. It's like a blank canvas, and we start to paint what that picture of our life what we want it to look like. And so I talk about the art of living. That's what I refer to. And there are times where that road, has bends and halts and has 180s and overturns. And so you start to paint again. What is my life going to look like now? What is important to me in living of my life now that I've, had these changes, or, sudden experiences of hardship or struggle? What is that going to look like for me now? And it's a reflective piece at times, and sometimes it's an action piece of actually doing it.
So it's always a work in progress, essentially. You're always creating. How do you know that what you're doing is meaningful?
I think that's a question that is reserved for those who are experiencing it. And maybe some questions that can help with that is what I'm doing in my life. Is it drawing a sense of satisfaction for me? Is it drawing a sense of, stirring my soul and making me feel alive or at peace, or a sense of, contentment? And that ebbs and flows too. It's never, I find from my life anyway, never static. It ebbs and flows and moves. And I sometimes roll with it. I sometimes hide under my sheets and want to hide from the world. And other times I celebrate it and go, okay, what am I learning through this?
And we often talk about, purpose too, and finding purpose, and something that motivates you to kind of keep going, especially if you're feeling at a crossroads in your life, to find a sense of direction. But again, is that always necessary? I mean, is it always necessary to have purpose, to have a direction? Can you not just linger at the crossroads for a while, or do you always have to sort of be moving in some direction for life to be meaningful and purposeful?
Are you referring maybe just to a sense of just being able to be?
Yeah.
In that sense, yeah. I find in our world that it's constantly moving, and our culture is constantly, saying, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And I find there's greater recognition of being able to slow down. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, whether we're forced to, or whether we choose to, just take stock and to pause and to relish just in the present moment, for sure. And I think that has a purpose to it too, though. That has a purpose to it as well, and being able to slow down our bodies, slow down our minds, and appreciate, what we have in the present moment. I try to, and I'm not great at it, but every night just taking stock of, what I've been grateful for, just 3 things that I'm grateful for that day. And that helps me to remember and appreciate, rather than going from one activity to the next, to reflect on what I do have in my life. And even through the struggles, being able to stop and say, yeah, today was a hard day. And that's not that it's okay, but it's okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes me think of an expression that I heard early on in my meditation training, that the act of meditation was about the practice of being a human being as opposed to a human doing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the idea that sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on accomplishing things and getting things done, but there is value in just being.
Yes, and it's creating a habit out of it, because it is hard work to slow down, especially when for some that's a daily practice where we're constantly going. We wake up, we have our breakfast, we go to work, we come home. Perhaps we're making supper, or perhaps we're ordering in supper, or perhaps we're having friends over, and it's constant motion.
Right.
And that can be tiring. It can also be rejuvenating at the same time.
Yeah.
But it can also be opportunity to go, okay, maybe today I'm just gonna pause, for it could be for even 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
just to pause and look back on your day and appreciate
One of our attendees had mentioned something. I'm just going to find that note. Oh, okay. Yeah, because one must wrestle sometimes with this if you've had a diagnosis, a serious diagnosis, or maybe even a life-threatening diagnosis, that somebody wrote that their attitude now is don't postpone, do it now. And so there must be also that kind of that inner conflict of wanting to live my dreams, wanting to get things done, don't want to delay any longer or postpone and put off stuff. I can see that too, that would feel like that having such a diagnosis would create that urgency to want to do things.
Yeah, for sure it would. I wonder if you've experienced that with your clients as well, Kathleen, or people you've met. I can certainly attest to that with people I've met, some who recognize, yes, I have, very limited time, and there's things that I want to do still.
Yeah.
And also those who look at that and go, okay, there's things I want to do, but I can also, take stock, for a few moments, slow down, recognize and appreciate, the small moments that happen right before, our very lives, a smile,
Mm-hmm.
a hug, someone who tells you that they're thinking of you or praying for you. It's one of the most, simple but most beautiful of things to care for each other that way.
Yeah. And this isn't one of our polls, but I'd like to kind of throw that out to our audience and maybe have some people comment in the Q&A just about, whether they feel, that urgency to do things. And I know the pandemic's created a lot of frustration for people, by not being able to travel, not being able to be with family, when we were in code red, and that was really hard for a lot of people, especially for a lot of people that were going through the cancer journey at the same time. So yeah, I'd kind of like to hear from maybe some people in our audience, how they balance that, the just being able to slow down and be present, but also wanting to accomplish things, to live their dreams, to get on with the stuff that they haven't been able to do, and how they're managing that. We did have another poll as well, and just to talk about maybe what some of the fears are for people moving forward. So I'll get Ellie to launch that now, the third poll, if she can, and see if that comes to your screen. So again, feel free to comment and in the Q&A, because this again is not an exhaustive list and may not reflect what your own fears are. So just as we're waiting for the results of that, somebody's mentioned about that, yeah, completing their bucket list, that's, you know, something that they're focused, I guess, on doing, and then other people feeling that there's just not enough time to get things done. And we do hear this a lot too with people that struggle with, you know, cancer fatigue, is that not having the energy to do the things that they would even enjoy doing, and really wrestling with that.
It can take a lot of effort, physical effort and energy-wise effort, you know, just to get through each day. Yes.
Yeah. Are the polls, can we launch the results or share the results of that poll? Ellie's done that. Would you like to reflect on that, Daniel, the results?
I think the first one, my cancer was going to reoccur, would be something that I've heard many times before, and it makes a lot of sense. I believe that you know, the people who I've had a chance to talk to who have cancer have also, you know, reiterated that you know, is my life, you know, going to be, you know, free of having to come for, you know, hospital visits or clinic visits, or is this going to come back, and, you know, we can still have a place to move on in our lives and live life, but also, you know, in the back of our minds, wondering, is that going to be there? Is that going to happen again? Is it going to reoccur? Is it going to come back? Not being there for my family. Yeah.
And somebody else has mentioned here in shared about just how to cope with family, and telling them that, you know, that their life is ending, and that their illness is terminal, that being a really difficult topic, obviously, to approach with family.
I was surprised my own death is lower. Yes. It's very telling, where the more important thing is, you know, cancer recurring or not being there for my family.
Yeah,
it
not
shows
being
the priorities and what's important for
people,
our guests who are here.
Yeah. So, and one of the other challenges just noted before about because of COVID, just the isolation because of an immune system being compromised, and so that there's even, you know, more isolation than the average person that's going through the pandemic. So these are big challenges.
It takes another layer, you know, of stress and you know, isolation and being alone when it's already lonely to begin with. Yeah. For those who perhaps don't have family with them, and even maybe those who do have family with them, still feeling, you know, alone in their, or feeling well supported and feeling, you know, well cared for. All those.
I did want to mention maybe here, just because it's Allie's reminded me about our dignity therapy program, and that's a nice legacy that people can use to leave a document for family and friends to read about their life and their wishes, and just, you know, what they want to share. So dignity therapy is something that is available here, and for people that are struggling with that, or at that place and stage in their life, that might be something that they might want to consider doing.
Yes, and there's many people too, you know, whether you know, their health is serious or, you know, even minor. For some, in terms of relationships, I often hear about those who want to reconnect, maybe with those that they have past relationships that have been hurt or damaged, talked to in a while, and wanting to make amends or wanting to make right a relationship that, you know, is feeling, you know, like an unleft wound in their life that they want, you know, to reconcile with.
There's a question from one of our audience members about just the practicalities of how do you prepare someone you love for your impending death, if you're at that stage in your journey. What advice do you give to people about how to prepare their wife or their children for that? You must face that quite a bit in your work.
I do in my work. It's a great question. And I think for many people, that the hardest part is being able to say goodbye, because they wonder, like when much in the poll is, not being able to be there for their family and what that's going to be like. And so I think having the opportunity for them to invite family into their life, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's as a group, to be able to start and share, what that relationship means to them personally. Perhaps they, whether it's their partner, their family member, their friend, and talk about what their life together has meant to each other. And for some, I find it's easier for them to write it out first on paper, to get their thoughts out of what this relationship means to them, and why it's so important, and why they want to reach out to that particular person, and be able to have a moment just together with them or as a group, and go one by one to share. Oftentimes, family are also wanting to share in that, exchange, and talk about what that person meant to them, and why their relationship was so important. And you get some beautiful, honest conversations where they laugh, they cry, they share their frustration at times too. And you made me angry when, and other times where I'm so lucky to have you in my life. And it's just setting time aside to think about what you want to say, and then to invite that person into a conversation, or just to share with them. Maybe you don't want them to talk back, you just want to share with them and let them know what they meant. One thing that is helpful in that conversation is being able to say, some important things like, I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, I forgive you, and thank you. And those can be just, simple things that can expand into wider conversations. But that is often for someone a good jumping on point when they really don't know what to say. It's like, I've been thinking, I still know what to say. Then start there. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned about that this has helped them focus on what they can control in their life, and the gratitude. And you mentioned about kind of reflecting at the end of the day on things that you're grateful for. And how does that attitude, an attitude of gratitude, how does that assist people or help people through this journey?
It provides an important reflective piece on looking at their lives at a closer level, looking at every day, the things in their life that maybe we forget makes a difference, or makes us feel good, or makes us bring a sense of happiness, a sense of joy, a sense of peace to our lives. Because we, as we mentioned before, we make life busy at times, and when we don't stop and just be able to notice the little things or the big things that make our life rich and valuable and important, brings to our lives greater sense of, I think, life as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Even through whether it's a hardship or not. It can be harder in those moments when life is definitely harder to really go, I don't see that at all. Mm-hmm. And I remember reading an article where a doctor not challenged, but invited someone to do that who was living with cancer, and said, Doc, I don't see it. I don't see it. And just keep on trying. Just keep on looking. Mm-hmm. And a couple of weeks later, was able to say, okay, I see a few things here and there. And as that practice started to unfold, they saw more and more going, oh, wow, okay. I was able to stand up today. That was actually good. Okay, I see that. or I was able to eat food and was actually able to stay down, or I had a little bit more energy that I normally do. Okay, that's great. I'm gonna hold on to that and be grateful for that, because I don't always have that.
Mhm. Um, when we talk about that gratitude, that's so important, having that sense of gratitude and reflecting on that, there's also this other aspect of um, the letting go of certain dreams that you mentioned at the beginning, right? And it can be heartbreaking, not just disappointing. It can be heartbreaking to let go of some of those dreams that you've had about your life and how you saw your life going. And I'm just wondering, when we do that, I mean, is there a part of you that might think, well, now I'm just settling? Like I'm not really grateful. I'm just like settling because this is all I've got right now. And, but there's still a part of you that wants to live that life that you imagine and live those dreams. And so how do you help people reconcile that so that they feel that they're not compromising and settling, that these things truly are of value as opposed to the things that they thought that they would be doing or enjoying at that place in their life?
Yeah, that's it's a good question.
Because I'm thinking,
Mm.
even during the times of the pandemic, I mean, we can say, well, we appreciate all these little things in life. Yes, that's true. But there's still a part of you that's like, but I planned on going to Europe and I planned on doing this. And now I'm settling for this.
Yes, it's not what I want.
It's not what I want, but I'm settling for it. And I'm trying to be appreciative and grateful. But, in a sense, there's still this part of you that's longing, that's wanting to have this different life. And
Wanting to want more. Yes.
yeah.
I think just in the acknowledging of that, that's an
Mhm.
important step.
Mhm.
To be able to say, this is what I want. It's not happening. I don't like it.
Mhm.
Um, and not, and rather than, maybe putting that brave face and saying everything's good, everything's okay, being able to go sometimes, no, darn it, I want some things in my life to go right for me or go well for me, or I want to go on that trip, or I want to be able to drive my car. I want to be able to go back to work. I really want those things. And I think again, it comes back to the expression of it. Even if we can't get those things, be able to acknowledge it and yet give voice to it, and be able to um, um, have someone who really would listen and understand and go, yeah, I can hear that's really hard for you. I can hear that really painful or heartbreaking, and you want
Mhm.
that so much. And I think in that sharing, in that expression, there is a support. It doesn't change things. It doesn't make it better in terms of, making what you want in reality, but it makes it so that you don't feel so alone in those feelings and desires and hopes and dreams,
Mhm.
that someone understands and recognizes that and go, I wish that
Mhm.
for you too.
Right. And
Mhm.
and to recognize just how important it was for you to have had those dreams and what value they had, in
Yes,
your life, why they were important and meaningful.
that's
And
exactly it. Yes,
so it's
exactly.
really, again, it's sort of working towards that, accepting life as it is rather than how we want it to be, the challenge,
Mhm.
right? And just of accepting. And can acceptance and hope coexist at the same time? I mean, can we be accepting of life as it is and still have hope?
Mhm.
It's
I
kind of
believe,
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I do see that in the encounters I have, in the conversation I have, and for some there is this at first this sense that you mentioned before. I want to be able to have, all these things, and after the expression of it, and after being able to talk about it, there's a sense of, okay, I know I can't have it, but now that I've been able to talk about it, now I'm able to look at, okay, what is next? What can I build that maybe is not exactly what I want, but still I can include in my life, that is important. Maybe it's not going on that trip, but maybe it's being able to see a loved one who I haven't seen in a long time. Maybe it's not being able to drive a car, but being able to drive in a car with a loved one and being able to go for that ride, maybe out to the country or out to somewhere, and things like that.
So that's that art of living that you were talking about, sort of that process of always creating, modifying, just always creating, new realities in a way for ourselves that are rewarding and meaningful.
That's part of it. It
And
sure is. Yeah. And it doesn't mean we always like it. And I think that's an important part to acknowledge too. Sometimes you still like, I'm enjoying this, part of my life in those chains, but I still miss, that part of it. And that's okay too. But to also go, okay, even though I can't have those things, is there something that still for me is worthwhile and gives me hope? And again, that's why, I mentioned that many faces of hope, because it can have many faces. It maybe not be exactly what it was before, but there's still opportunity to look at our life and acknowledge that, yes, there is change, but there's also change in terms of creating a life for me that's still, valuable and good and important for me as a person.
right. Well, let's check in with our audience right now and ask them about their hopes at this time. So I'll get Ellie to launch the next poll to ask you, what is your greatest hope at this time? And please feel free to use the Q&A to express your thoughts if they're not listed here in these responses. And are you seeing that, Daniel?
I'm not seeing the responses yet, but I am seeing the poll.
Okay, I feel so left out of this now because it seems that everybody can see them but me.
I find it so neat that the responses come so quickly and there's the answer right away or soon.
It's a great feature when it's working.
When it's working, because for me, I'll be going, what am I going to put in there? Probably like, we're waiting, Dan, for the poll. Hurry up, please.
Did Ellie share the results? Yeah.
Yeah, she has.
So how did that score?
The highest percentage, actually there's a tie between spending quality time with people to remain healthy. And then at 43% is also to live in the moment and to find a sense of inner peace. And at 51% is to live life well.
Someone's mentioned.
Response to that is just it makes me glad to see that. Yeah. People be able to find and recognize there's something that is important to them still. Yeah.
Someone else has shared that one of their hopes, I guess, is to visit a family, visit family in another province, and to live as long as I can for my children.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that touches me. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think anybody that has children, that's
or to live life for their family, children are just to be able to spend as much time with those we love and to cherish that and to make the most of that. Pandemic has not helped for many, but we're getting there slowly.
Just a couple other questions for you, Daniel, from our audience. Somebody mentioned about family and friends thinking that I should be back to normal and that they would like to go somewhere and not think about cancer for a while. I think that that's something that it's very valid to want to be able to do that.
Oh, indeed. We need a break at times from the heaviness of thinking about, your diagnosis and thinking about cancer. Because as all of them know, there's treatments and for some, and there's doctor's appointments for some, and there's blood work, and there's this and that, and there's a lot that is involved around cancer in their lives. It can be all encompassing at times, and to be able to break away from that for a time and go, for a time, I am not going to participate in thinking about all the time this part of my life. And it is a part, it is not all, it is a part. And be able to have time to enjoy life in a way that brings goodness.
Just something that you just
remember that still exists.
Yeah, something that you just said there really resonates with me when you said it's a part of your life, but it's not all of it. And I think that comes back to that question of identity, right? That you're not just a cancer patient. That's
Yes.
one aspect of your life, that you have cancer, but that there's so many other aspects of your life. You're a parent, you're a grandparent, you're, a sibling, you're a son, a daughter. Like there's all these other aspects of your life that are, and that this aspect of cancer is just a component. It's just a piece of it.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
But
yeah.
that you don't have to identify with it necessarily.
Yeah, indeed. I think that gives us freedom to look at ourselves beyond our beyond cancer. And yes, that is, part of me, but there's all this other part of my life that maybe has been put to the side for a time as I care for myself in treating, cancer as much as can be done. And then time to also go, there's these other part of my life that have been maybe put off to the side that I want to engage in again. Maybe I want to get back into writing. Maybe I want to get back into, attending church again. Maybe I want to, or, a religious, service again. Maybe I want to have time again to go to the beach or be able to participate in a good meal with friends without having to have a conversation that centers on cancer.
I just wanted to share a couple other comments that were made. Somebody else asked or mentioned, sorry, that their greatest hope was to be here long enough to have grandchildren. And somebody else had a question specifically, about kids and struggling with being a parent and their own children having problems of their own, and not necessarily feeling that support there, but maybe feeling exhausted by the whole aspect of trying to juggle being a parent and then having your own health issues and then having kids that have problems. What advice do you give people when they're feeling overwhelmed by overwhelmed by life?
Life doesn't stop. Yes, and you have all these other things. I think in my conversation with people, oftentimes they carry that on their own and thinking, I have to work this out on my own. I have to carry this stress on my own. And I really encourage people to open up, to share, if they have people that they can, to share that load, to share that opportunity to invite others in to help along, with those responsibilities or stressors. When we carry it on our own, we feel more alone and we feel more overwhelmed and more stressed. And for those even who don't maybe have somebody, to know that there are resources out there in the community, that maybe they're not people that or people that you're familiar with, but there are good resources out there to support us when we feel like we have nobody in our lives. Perhaps you moved away for work and you're in a province all on your own, and there's no family or friends that you've made connections with yet. What do you do then? And it's knowing that there are resources out there, and especially with technological advances like this being able to reach out, even online. No, it's not as good as meeting in person, but there are good resources even online to help us through, and people who can meet with you or, even articles or research or information that is available that is helpful. And I always put a caveat that when it comes to, papers, to be wary of what you, look online for, and to make sure that the article is by someone who, has educational background that is
Right.
legit. And
Yeah, and we do have some great resources here in the Patient and Family Resource Center, and some wonderful books and really beautiful inspirational books that are written by people that have gone through similar experiences and shared their insights and knowledge and wisdom. And there's some really lovely books here that
and
I would.
support groups too, and support groups as well, which is, I
Mm,
think, vital for those who are interested in that and helping us through to share together what life is like,
mhm.
and with other people who understand and know what that's like.
Right. We did have a question from somebody, and it's maybe a broad question if you wanted to maybe just share some thoughts on it. It's how to create a routine after such a big change in your life. So after a cancer diagnosis, how does one go about creating new routines when things begin to settle, I guess, once the dust settles, and then any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I would invite people who are looking for that to look back on time before, all this, cancer treatment and activities took place, and start looking at those activities, whether big or small. And I often encourage people to start off small first with activities that bring in routine, whether it's, waking up at a certain time and having breakfast at a certain time, and going for a walk maybe afterwards, or engaging in whatever activity you used to beforehand, if you're able to, of course. And if not, looking at activities that may suit you. But start off small, and start off with activities that you can do, and that brought you a sense of, goodness before, and support before, and slowly bringing that into your day again. And I think people will be able to recognize, some of those things that they were doing before in their life, and just bring it back slowly,
Mhm.
a little thing at a time, until you feel comfortable going, okay, I think I'm ready for something else to add in into my day.
I
And
guess that can be very empowering too, especially if you've been through a process where you've lost a lot of control over so many aspects of your life, and then to be able to implement something back into your life, as you said, even slowly, I would think
that's
would.
a really good point. It does bring back control and a sense of independence too, that I'm doing this on my own.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
When
anything,
things have been taken away from me, I can do this.
right. And I think that speaks to that whole creation piece that you mentioned about the art of living, and I'm glad that I asked that question about how you describe that, because that's how I sort of see that expression now as
Mhm.
a work in progress,
Yes,
developing
indeed.
this piece of your this art piece,
That's right.
yeah, that continues to change and morph into different things, but it's always creating, which is important,
Hmm.
and not to stop.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I would caveat that, the piece about routine, if something isn't working, to not feel like you're doing something wrong. Um,
Mhm.
there can be pressure that, okay, this isn't going the way I want to. What have I done? What is wrong with me? It's no, it's finding your way. And if that isn't working, try, something that, that maybe fits, easier, and not letting that stop you from trying.
Right.
Because I think it's in the trying and the pursuit of it that over time we learn, okay, this fits better, or this fits as a better routine in my life than this does. I'm going to go with that more than what I thought was going to work.
Mhm. Somebody mentioned that scrapbooking has been a help to them, so that would be an example of something that maybe,
Mm,
trying something that feels creative and is
mm,
grounding and feels like you have some sense of control over the outcome.
I'm a visual person, so I love
Yeah.
that kind of aspect of being able to create and put into something solid and something tangible that
Yeah,
you can
for
look back
sure.
on and go, yeah, I did this.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm proud of myself for doing that.
We're getting close to the end of our presentation, so if there's any other questions that people have, take a moment, to share them right now. We did have a question about emotionally preparing to return to work. Is that something that you often discuss with patients when they're in hospital about how they work up that I guess focus and being able to be centered enough to go back to the workplace?
Yeah, it's not a common conversation I have, but in thinking about that just a little bit, I, I do think that it comes back to that important piece of being able to say, what am I excited about, what going back to work, and what am I scared about, and what are some of the things that I'm looking forward to, and what are some of the things that I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, and being able to talk with your employer if you feel comfortable with that, some of those things, and being able to have a conversation that maybe working together and say, how can we make this work so I feel safe and supported, and I still can contribute to the job. But I know there's brighter minds than mine who have had conversations about that time. So
Well,
that's
there
my
is
little
a
piece.
yeah, no, there's a good website called Cancer and Work, I think, that has some suggestions too, and perhaps can provide some from guidance, on how to approach that
That'd be
return
great.
to work. Another question from one of our audience members about feeling angry at your body for betraying you, for not being well.
Mm.
Is that something that people will experience, that sense of anger and frustration that their body is failing them?
Oh yes, it's like they're at the will of their body, and they've worked hard at maybe or worked at treating it, well, and caring for it, and then it does something that, to them that you go, my body, what have you done? And that loss of control too, on top of that, and being able to recognize the hurt that you may feel that your body has done to you, and not being able to have a say in that matter. Yeah.
Hmm. Just another question about returning to work on treatment, and that's a complicated issue, I guess, probably that one that someone would have to bring up with their treatment team too, if they're still on treatment, in terms of what's realistic and doable for them. So that might be more of a discussion to have with one's treatment team. And then again, like as you say, with your workplace, in terms of what's realistic in terms of expectations, right? Sometimes people will look at you and think that you look like you're ready to come back to work, but that's the outside physical body may not be really representing what's going on emotionally, mentally for people inside, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely.
Question about what kind of support groups are there for people long past completion of their cancer journey? Do you know of any, like, where there's, after 2 years out, 5 years out of treatment, are there supports for people that you know of? I'm not sure of any myself.
I was going to put that back onto you. You're aware. I am not. Maybe there's opportunity there, though, if there isn't one. One form.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something moving forward after cancer can create it, have its own unique challenges, especially as you mentioned before, the anxiety and depression and things that fear of reoccurrence, that these are, more specific to post-treatment, and in terms of really, really interrupting people's flow of life, because they have this black cloud that they feel is hanging over them, how they live with that and move forward confidently, optimistically, right? And with hope. So those are really specific challenges. And
Yes,
there is,
they are. It's an important topic too. It
yeah,
really is.
very much. Yeah. Well, this has been a really great discussion, Daniel. I really, and
Again.
what's made it especially poignant is just all the input that we've had from our audience today, the comments, the sharing that people have offered. And as you said, it would have been wonderful to meet in person as a group and be able to see people in person. But in a lot of ways, it's just as impactful. I know that I was a little bit teary there, and as were you. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody's sharing, and I hope that it's been meaningful for you as well, our audience, and want to thank you for joining us. Somebody here just wanted to share: shower, sunshine, stretch, and do something purposeful. That sounds like lovely advice
I love it.
for us all.
That's how we
So
support each other, things like that.
yeah, that's right. Sometimes you just need to
along.
hear that little tidbit of wisdom to make it through another day. So thank
Yes.
you. Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate you being here. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. We would, again, appreciate your feedback and invite you to complete our survey at the end of this webinar so that we can continue to develop ideas for future webinars. And thank you again, and have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye.